Ukrainian soldiers have published a video from the Pokrovsk direction, where some of the heaviest fighting on the front is taking place right now. The evacuation of the wounded and the dead is being carried out under extremely difficult conditions. The main strike forces of the Russian army are concentrated in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd area, where the enemy is trying to cut Ukrainian units off from their supply lines. The goal is to reach strategic highways and strike at supply routes. If the enemy succeeds in carrying out this plan, the defensive lines will come under serious pressure. The fate of not only these two cities, but also the further course of the entire campaign in Donbas depends on this. What the soldiers themselves have to say. Watch next. This is TSN.ua News. I'm Alina Torishin. Subscribe to our channel and give us a like. And now let's get to the main story. On the Kremlin's orders, the operation in Donetsk region has received new momentum. According to the Financial Times, Putin has set the goal of capturing Pokrovsk by mid-November. Moscow has intensified its offensive actions, seeking to turn the tide at the front after fruitless diplomatic initiatives from the US. Russian assault groups have already begun infiltrating the city, particularly from the south. The enemy has concentrated 11,000 occupiers here who are trying to encircle the city. According to official data, about 200 to 300 Russians have infiltrated the city. They are being tracked and eliminated by Ukraine's defense forces. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, personally visited this area and refuted reports about the encirclement of Ukrainian units, which had previously been claimed by the Russian leadership. At the same time, he acknowledged that the situation here is difficult. The enemy is concentrating infantry within the urban area, avoiding direct confrontations and constantly changing their positions. That is why the primary task has been identified as detecting such groups and eliminating them. A decision has been made to strengthen defensive capabilities in the Pokrovsk direction. Syrsky gave a stern warning to commanders about the inadmissibility of irresponsible behavior. In case of violations, strict accountability will be applied, up to and including removal from positions. UAF Sergeant Ilya Krutenko writes that, in fact, there are no good options for saving a city once the Russians have already entered it. And the main reason why Ukraine's defense forces are losing ground in these cities is that the enemy is willing to lose over 1,000 of their soldiers a day, while Ukraine is not. The military say that there is no level of losses that would force the Russians to retreat.
They will keep sending their cannon fodder forward. Right now, our strategy is to fight until they run out of money, not people. The main thing is that we don't run out of people first.
Julian Röpke, a journalist from the German outlet Bild, shared a video recording showing groups of Russian occupiers in the Pokrovsk area of Donetsk region. In the footage, you can see that the soldiers are moving in civilian clothes, wearing black tracksuits and without any insignia, and without any identifying marks. This appearance makes identification more difficult and allows them to operate covertly among the civilian population. And in the 7th Air Assault Corps, in a comment to Militarny, it was reported that the Russians are even using female soldiers for reconnaissance in the Pokrovsk direction. These women dress in civilian clothes and pose as local residents, carrying ordinary bags or plastic sacks. Inside, they carry ammunition and batteries for rotation. In radio intercepts, the Russians refer to such operations as letting the goat loose. According to Deep State, Russian forces have blocked the strategic Pavlivka-Pokrovsk road. The map shows that the grey zone in Pokrovsk has sharply expanded toward the center and north. The enemy is also infiltrating to the south and northeast, bypassing Mirnohrad. 4 occupiers were spotted near the stele at the city entrance and in the northwestern part. They were eliminated. While the enemy mainly attacks Pokrovsk with infantry, near Mirnohrad they use both infiltration along several defensive lines and open deployment of armored vehicles. A soldier with the nickname Eastern Outpost writes on his Telegram channel that a large grey zone has formed in Pokrovsk. In fact, the Ukrainian armed forces control only the northern part of the city. The rest is the fog of war. There is no clarity about who is holding which positions and where. There are numerous pockets and local hotspots of fighting. The city is ceasing to be a single front. Infiltration tactics. This is the new reality of urban warfare. The enemy is not attacking by storm, but by covert infiltration. In small groups of 3 to 10 people. They infiltrate between positions using civilian clothing and dense urban development for concealment. Instead of going house by house, the territory is gradually filled in. Block by block turns into a gray zone, where you can't say for sure who controls the street. Essentially, the soldier says, it's the same as what's happening now in Kiev, in Kupiansk. Chaotization of defense, localized pockets of fighting, the absence of a front as a social line. The soldier notes that the enemy doesn't break through, but rather undermines from within.
The consequences. The defensive line loses its meaning. The city breaks up into isolated pockets. Centralized command is delayed. Reactions are unsynchronized. Resources are depleted in endless sweeps. The civilian environment turns into a field of shelters and risk. Formally, the territory is held. In reality, control over communication slips away. Moral exhaustion grows faster than the loss of military equipment.
In conclusion, the soldier writes that modern warfare is no longer about lines and kilometers. It's about surviving within a fragment. The enemy doesn't advance, he seeps through. Those who do not recognize this phenomenon and continue to fight by old patterns pay for their illusions with human lives. Other soldiers on Telegram channels share deep state photos from various settlements, reminding us of a series of typical mistakes, painful losses, and enemy advances in previous years. Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Kurachove, Vuhledar, Pokrovsk-Mirnograd, Kupiansk. And a soldier known as the Bakhmut Demon writes that the situation is very difficult. The enemy has brought more troops to Pokrovsk. Fighting is taking place on the outskirts and inside the city. There's no encirclement, but enemy drones are flying and they have to be jammed. According to him, Ukrainian units are still managing to hold back the Russian army on the flank. Details of the special units' operations. He does not disclose them for security reasons, but emphasizes that the situation is extremely tense. A medic from the evacuation crew of the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade with the call sign Vitsik, who is currently stationed in the Pokrovsk direction, wrote the following. I
don't have time right now to write lengthy posts about the situation in Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad. Now, the everyday reality in Pokrovsk is present on every page of social networks and Telegram channels. It disgusts me to see these red headlines from blogger journalists who boost their ratings at the cost of our lives. Maps with slogans, "We will endure," with millions of likes and a society lost in delusion. The comments completely shatter me.
The soldier also posted a shocking video with the caption,
Pokrovsk, our days. Evacuation of the wounded and the dead is carried out under extremely difficult conditions. You have to pull them out, and it's not a B. You have to evacuate the 300s who have already been waiting for a week, period. After you come under enemy fire and they want to bury you, you could be next too. 300s and 200s, depending on your luck, 59 minutes. We thought that was it. They'd leave us alone, but no. What came next was the worst. They took good revenge for us. Remember the price at which all this shore is going on.
No recognition. That's it. Ha, just checking in. Is everything okay? Good? Alright, let's exit now.
Выход.
Are you shooting at us? Do you want to?
On social media, they also showed a video from Mirnohrad, which is nearby next to Pokrovsk. The enemy is basically wiping the city off the map. Analyst and Deep State co-founder Roman Pohorilye reports that the situation in Mirnohrad remains extremely tense. The city is under constant pressure from several directions. According to his assessment, it is now almost impossible to rotate Ukrainian units since Russian forces have already entrenched themselves near the settlement of Rivne, effectively cutting off the main logistical routes. It's not just about a physical blockade. In this area, enemy reconnaissance drones and strike FPVs are actively operating, constantly monitoring the territory, detecting and destroying any attempts to deliver supplies, reinforcements, or provisions. According to the expert, this tactic allows the occupiers to gradually isolate Ukrainian units, depriving them of the ability to maneuver and preparing the ground for a further assault on the city. A soldier with the call sign Mushnoy adds that leaving the city will be difficult. Corridors are under pressure. You have to look for ways out and think about how to leave properly without unnecessary risk.
Right now, our fighters are working persistently in the apartment buildings to the southeast, in the private sectors to the northeast. You can immediately see the determined close contact. There are even attempts at our counterattacks near the captured territory of the mine to push the enemy back, but there we fell into an ambush, and this painfully affects the pace of operations. The enemy is trying to block our escape routes, pressing on the exit from the area south of Rodinske, as well as on the approaches from the northeast, from Pokrovsk along the highway to Mirnohrad. If the bottleneck holds and there remains an opening in it, there is a chance to get our people out of there. If not, the situation will become much more complicated.
The serviceman also stated that decisive action is needed and called for supporting the fighters and speaking more about the problems. The enemy is not letting up in the Dnipropetrovsk region either. The enemy is gradually advancing offensive actions in the area of Dnipropetrovsk. The occupiers have already pushed into the eastern outskirts of the settlement, securing positions among the first houses. This is also reported by the serviceman with the call sign Mushnoy. Fighting is currently ongoing in the eastern part of the village, where the defense continues. However, the pressure is increasing with each passing moment. If the enemy is not stopped by artillery or drones, there is every reason to believe that Dnipropetrovsk could be cut off in the near future. At the same time, the enemy has actively deployed aviation. Heavy FAB bombs are being used, destroying shelters and positions on the approaches to the settlement. This significantly complicates the maneuvering of Ukrainian forces and prevents the accumulation of reserves for a counterattack. To the north of Vishnev, an increase in enemy pressure is also being observed. There is recorded advancement in the direction of the settlement of High. The enemy is consolidating along the road, occupying forest belts and gradually establishing strong points for further advancement. It is evident that another stage of the offensive is being prepared, and it is precisely this sector that may become a new hotspot in the coming days. A soldier with the call sign Michny reports that there is also an escalation in the Pavlivka direction. What the enemy had been preparing for several weeks, intensive reconnaissance, the use of fiber optic drones, and the deployment of decoys, has begun to materialize in strikes on the area. The enemy is moving into the active phase of the operation. From the southern flank, the enemy is trying to advance into the urban area, using chaos and ruins as cover. One of these groups was eliminated right in the building where the occupiers were trying to entrench themselves. The actions of our fighters were successful. According to the serviceman, such raids are considered reconnaissance by combat, a test of the defenses before a possible full-scale assault. There is also increased activity recorded on the eastern flank. The enemy is probing the direction, looking for weak spots, which indicates a likely combined offensive from both sides. Mokny says what now? The top priorities are to strengthen reconnaissance on the approaches, detect the enemy at early stages, and work more actively with drones, keeping the enemy constantly on the move and not allowing them to dig in or amass forces. The situation is under control, but the balance is maintained thanks to vigilance and quick response. Fierce fighting also continues in the Kupiansk direction in the Kharkiv region. Recently, the Kremlin dictator cynically claimed that Russian troops had supposedly cut off Ukrainian units near Pokrovsk and Kupiansk from the main forces. He even suggested a ceasefire so that foreign and Ukrainian journalists could verify the situation for themselves. However, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, refuted these fabrications, emphasizing that there is no encirclement of Ukrainian troops either near Pokrovsk or near Kupiansk. Such statements are nothing more than another element of Russia's information warfare. On the deep state map, it is visible that the enemy army has already reached the city center. Pressure is coming from the north, and it continues. There is street fighting. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Georgy Tiki warned journalists not to trust the Kremlin's offer of so-called humanitarian corridors in areas of active combat. The ministry called such initiatives blatant provocations aimed at destabilizing the situation and justifying Russia's criminal actions. The Foreign Ministry reminds that Putin has repeatedly broken his own promises regarding ceasefires, and the corridors he proposed have already become traps, in particular during the tragedy in Ilovaisk in 2014. In addition, the ministry emphasized that any trips by media representatives to temporarily occupied territories without permission of Ukraine is a direct violation of the law and international law and will have serious reputational and legal consequences. According to the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ukraine is closely monitoring the situation and urges global media not to become tools of Russian provocation. The Russian army has made minor advances in the eastern part of the Zaporizhzhia region. At the same time, in the western part of the region, Ukrainian forces repelled the invaders. This is evidenced by a new analysis from the Institute for the Study of War. Experts from the study, as well as geolocated videos published on October 30th, note that Russian troops have advanced north of Huliai to the central part of the village of Krasnohirske in the Polohi district. According to the conclusions of the Institute for the Study of War, the occupiers were also able to advance to the southern part of Krasnohirske, as well as to the west of the settlements of Krasnohirske and Pravilne in the direction of the eastern left bank of the Yanchur River. The TSN.ua team calls on all Ukrainians to support our soldiers who are defending the country today. On the front lines. Stay with TSN.ua to keep up with the most important news. I'll see you in the next episodes.